Hey everyone, Tyler here at The Movie Beat. Welcome back to another video. This one's going to be my underrated K-horror films, Volume 2. So if you didn't see Volume 1, go back and check that one out too. This one, or before I get into it, when I mean underrated, I just mean like when people talk about horror films, Korean horror films in particular, these are movies that I usually don't see mentioned very much that I think are very worth checking out. And I do really like the movies. So moving on to Volume 2, I'm going to be telling you my thoughts on this movie, Sorum, from 2001. This was directed by Yoon Jong-chan. It was his first feature-length film. It stars Kim Myung-min and the late Jang Jin-young and Ki-ju Bong. So I think it's worth mentioning that in the late 90s and early 2000s when this film came out, a lot of American horror was really riding that teen slasher revival wave that's really started by Scream and movies like that. And in Asia, we were looking for new ways to show that virgin ghost or some other young woman in a white dress and long black hair to sneak up on you. And really, there's only so many ways to show that. So there's been some very creative ways, but at this time, writer-director Yoon Jong-chan was really cooking up his own kind of horror that, when looking at all of these different movies, this one to me was the most bound in reality horror of them all. This one does have some spiritual and other haunting aspects, especially when it comes to setting and things like that, but the horror in this one takes a very human form in the way that it examines a lot of human suffering and really tragic misfortunes surrounding the inhabitants of this really rundown apartment building. So I do think it's one of the most underrated K-films out there and deserves to be taken a look at. So let's get into the story real quick. When cab driver Junghyun, played by Kim Myung-min, moves into a rundown apartment building to save on money and be closer to his dispatch center, he soon learns that the room he's begun to rent has a tragic history. Not only did the previous tenant of room 504 die in a mysterious fire, but 30 years prior, a woman was murdered in that very room, and another fire also broke out then. Junghyun learns all this from a neighbor in room 505, a novelist named Mr. Lee, played by Ki-ju Bong, who is basing his latest mystery novel about the events. One day, Junghyun notices that the unhappy convenience store clerk from around the corner, Sun-young, played by Jung Jin-young, lives down the hall from him in room 510. After giving her a ride home from work one night, he hears her getting beaten up by her gambling-addicted husband. Later, a bloodied and battered Sun-young approaches Junghyun with the news that her husband is dead, and he offers to help bury him in the woods. The two grow close, but the weight of their pasts, as well as an ominous presence in the apartment building, begins to shed new light on the 30-year-old mystery that begins to tear their worlds apart forever. So I think the first thing you guys are going to notice about Sorum when you give it a shot is the technical brilliance, and that really comes with some of the opening shots of the film. You're going to notice right away as it introduces the character Junghyun and the setting where everything's going to be taking place in. The apartment building, it just looks freaky and haunted. But there really is some exquisite camera framing and some heavy contrast lighting as it introduces this character. That lighting really shadows him and the building and the darkness, and it uses a lot of natural lighting from the outside. So to me, it kind of gave me this feeling of a light at the end of the tunnel for these misfortunate characters, but they are really in the thick of it all. The superb cinematography really makes this disgusting old building look pretty in a lot of cases. Everything from Junghyun's oddly weighted luggage as he's carrying it into his room, or the lighting fixtures on the ceiling of his room, start to become a point of curiosity as the camera kind of slowly pans over these things, raising hints at some possible future importance. But it really is the perfect establishment of setting, and I think this movie Sorum makes great use of the setting to create an incredible atmosphere. And the movie also uses a lot of extended single-take sequences for some of its dialogue and other physical performances. Some of them can be upwards of 5 minutes long. So in this way, Sorum feels very intimate at times, like being in the front row at a great stage play where you can admire the sets, because you're not distracted by a lot of strange or fast-paced editing, and you can really just see the actors perform some amazing sequences. But I think all of those technical achievements would really not be would not make this film what it is without the powerhouse performances from lead actors Kim Myung-min and the late Jang Jin-young. Kim Myung-min, for me, has some of the best facial expressions in Korean film. Every emotion that he conveys on his face speaks louder than words. Even after the mystery surrounding this character's backstory, Junghyun, starts to fall into place, I was still left thinking that this guy is so unpredictable, like he could snap at any minute. For me, this character is kind of, looking back on it, it's kind of the combination between the Jong-soo and Ben character in the film Burning. So you're not really sure, is this guy like a serial killer? Does he have a master plan? Is he just unfortunate in his circumstances? There's a lot that keeps you pondering about this character. Especially when some detectives come in and start asking him some questions about his past. You're like, whoa. But whether he's mimicking Bruce Lee moves in his apartment by himself, or examining his face in the mirror while he's in the shower, or just staring off into the abyssal darkness of the powerless hallways in his apartment building, his performance was frightening and amazing. Jun Jinyoung, I have to say, was my first real Korean actress crush that I had ever since I saw her in the film The Foul King. So it's especially hard for me to revisit some of her older works after we lost her in 2009 from cancer. But this film, Sorum, for me, stands out as probably one of her most memorable performances, and I think that's partly to due to the tragic nature of the character that she's playing, and just how it's difficult to separate from the tragic nature of how we lost her, but it's also just such a brave role for an up-and-coming actress to take on. These characters are really stuck in this kind of cycle of horrors, and her character, I think, the best shows it through not only her appearance, but a lot of the mannerisms and the style of this character was put together. So whether it's her short, unusual hairstyle, a lot of the chain smoking, it was definitely more common at the time, but in that, not today, you're not going to see that. But all of that really helps build upon this apathetic attitude, mindset, the very hardened exterior she's built up after years of abuse that she's experienced. So on paper, this character was like a role for a firmly established veteran actress to take on as a challenge. And it's just so amazing that this new actress knocked it out of the park. She handled it so beautifully that, she got some Best Actress awards, and this really became the launch pad to her acting career. And you guys can look at her filmography afterwards and just see where she went in the short time that she had. So, amazing role. For me, I think I found the most interesting parts of Sorum to be the way that it presents the horror as sort of this negative feedback loop. And what I mean by that is all of the characters in this movie are dysfunctional, they're poor, they're otherwise down on their luck in one way or another, but all of them in this, especially this floor in their apartment, remain inextricably linked in one form or another that keeps this cycle of horrors on loop, just lasting through the generations. And in this movie, a lot of the characters start to ponder things like fate, love, reasons for living, if any, considering a lot of the misfortune that they've experienced in life. So in that way, the horror in the movie was this inescapable aspect to the reality, and it had me really questioning a lot of the ways that modern society tells us we should view, or one way to view the bottom rung of humanity and just their ability to really break out of the bad cycle that they're in. So really interesting way to portray the horror there. Overall, I think despite this movie having a lot of elements of classic horror, like the impeccably designed nightmarish setting of that apartment building, a lot of eerie music with the score, the murderous story does have an occasional jump scare scene here or there, but not very many. So in a lot of cases, Sorum is going to feel more like a drama and a mystery. So for those looking for more of the creep fest or more of a thrilling ride, I do think you're going to be a bit bored with this one because it really does acutely focus on characters and atmosphere. But I do think that because the drama and the horror is so interpersonal in Sorum, it's almost more frightening in that sense. So I do feel like it is a very true horror film. So it's a real slow burn, but I think those of you guys who are patient with it will be very rewarded. So it does a great job at luring you from one unsettling point to the next. So for that, I have to rate this movie a 8 out of 10. One of my underrated Korean horror films. Let me know what you guys think of this one if you've seen it or after you do watch it, or if you think if it's not underrated and it deserves to not be talked about or what have you. So this is my copy of Sorum on Blu-ray. It's the long gone homage collection from Korea. This one, they did have a HD remastering. When it does start up, it looks like, oh, this is not going to be good. But then when the light comes on and the film actually starts, this movie looks amazing on Blu-ray. It's a cool little digipack, hard digipack with the back there and the front. Homage collection, content zone, number 18. Inside, you can see the apartment building there, pretty freaky. Maybe you can see it better now. But yeah, this is unfortunate this collection is gone because they were pretty reliable for putting out some Korean films. There's some good ones on there, but if you do manage to find this one somewhere, it does have English subtitles and Japanese subtitles and Korean subtitles. So highly recommend if you guys can find this on Blu-ray, this would be a good option to go. As always, thanks for watching, and if you guys like this content, please like and subscribe. Let me know you want to see more like it in the future. So until next time, I'm Tyler at The Movie Beat. Keep watching movies.